Hi everyone, welcome back, thanks for joining us today. We've got another brand new story to share with you today, so let's begin. My name is Ben, and they say the truth sets you free, but when my wife dropped her truth bomb over breakfast, I wasn't prepared for the fallout. The sound of the coffee maker bubbled in the background, filling the kitchen with the smell of freshly brewed coffee. It was a scene so ordinary that anyone looking in might have mistaken it for a peaceful moment between a husband and wife. But beneath the surface, there was something else: quiet tension. For months now, breakfast had become a ritual. The kind of conversation that used to be lively had fizzled into a series of half-hearted comments. That morning wasn't any different, or so I thought. I reached for the toast, bracing myself for another round of polite indifference. But then she dropped it. "I slept with my boss," she said, her voice calm and casual, like she was commenting on the coffee being too strong. Then, as if to twist the knife, she added, "And he was amazing in bed." My hand froze mid-air, the toast hovering between the plate and my mouth. For a moment, I wondered if I'd heard her wrong. Surely she didn't just say that, not like that. She sat across from me, stirring her tea with a calm precision that seemed almost absurd given the words she'd just spoken. I stared at her, trying to process what she just said. It felt like stepping on a landmine, waiting for it to detonate. I felt a mix of anger, disbelief, and, if I'm honest, jealousy bubbling up inside me. But instead of exploding, I found myself doing the opposite. I leaned back in my chair, grabbed my coffee cup, and forced a smile. "Well," I said, my voice steady but sharp, "that's interesting, because I've been sleeping with your best friend." The words hung in the air, and for the first time that morning, her calm facade cracked. Her hand paused over her cup, her eyes widening as she processed what I just said. And just like that, our peaceful little morning shattered. The table between us wasn't just a place for toast and tea anymore, it was a battlefield. The silence in the kitchen was deafening after I dropped my confession. I could see her face change by hawk, anger, and disbelief swirling all at once. "You slept with Rachel?" she finally spat, her voice shaking. "My best friend." I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me, not after what she just said. "Don't act like you have the moral high ground here, Emily," I fired back. "You're the one who just casually admitted to screwing your boss. What did you expect? Applause?" Her cheeks flushed red, whether from anger or guilt, I couldn't tell. She slammed her mug onto the table, coffee sloshing onto the surface. "You're seriously trying to compare what I did to this? She's supposed to be my friend, Ben. And your boss is supposed to be your employer," I snapped, leaning forward. "Don't try to play the victim here, Emily. This was your idea, the open marriage, that was all you. You said you were unhappy, that we needed to explore other people to save what we had. So don't you dare act like I'm the only one who crossed a line." Her voice rose, filling the small kitchen. "I was unhappy because you checked out of this marriage years ago, Ben. I begged you to spend time with me, to talk to me, but no, you were too busy with your job, your stupid golf outings, or zoning out in front of the TV." My fist clenched. "Oh, give me a break, Emily, don't pin this all on me. You were practically married to your phone. I'd come home and you'd be glued to it, scrolling through Instagram or answering work emails. You didn't want a husband, you wanted a roommate who paid half the bills." The words hung in the air like a ticking time bomb. Her eyes narrowed, and for a second, I thought she might throw her coffee at me. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "So what, this is my fault?" she shot back, "because I wanted us to try something new to save this marriage?" "Save it?" I laughed bitterly. "Emily, the open marriage wasn't saving anything, it was just giving us permission to blow it all up." Jealousy unmasked. Despite all the shouting, there was one thing neither of us wanted to admit: we were jealous. Even after agreeing to the open marriage, The idea of the other being with someone else burned more than either of us was willing to say out loud. "How long has it been going on?" I asked, my voice sharp, my tone cutting through the noise like a blade. She hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line before she finally spoke. "Does it even matter?" she said, but her voice wavered, and I could see the guilt flashing in her eyes. "It matters to me, Emily," I said, my voice dropping lower, "because whether we like it or not, this still hurts." She stared at me for a moment, her bravado cracking just enough for me to see the person she used to be, the person I fell in love with. "What about you, Ben?" she said quietly. "How long have you been sneaking around with Rachel?" I swallowed hard. I didn't want to answer because the truth wasn't something I was proud of. "Long enough," I admitted, my voice flat, long enough to know it wasn't about her, it was about feeling something again. As the shouting paused, I couldn't help but think back to the night she first brought up the idea of an open marriage. We'd been sitting on the couch in silence, the kind of silence that feels louder than any argument. She turned to me, her face serious, her voice cautious. "Ben, I think we need to try something different," she'd said. "I'm not happy. I feel like we're just going through the motions." I'd resisted at first. The thought of her with someone else made my stomach churn. But I saw the desperation in her eyes, the fear that if we didn't do something, we'd lose each other completely. And so, I said yes. I convinced myself it was for the both of us, that it might reignite the spark we'd lost. For a little while, it did. The freedom, the newness, it felt exciting. But that excitement was quickly replaced by something else: insecurity, jealousy, and the realization that no amount of outside distractions could fix what was broken between us. Now, sitting across from her at the kitchen table, I felt the weight of it all crashing down. The open marriage wasn't freedom, it was an escape, a way to avoid facing the hard truths about how far we drifted. And as much as I wanted to blame her for everything, I knew, deep down, that I was just as guilty. After the shouting stopped, the silence in the room was deafening. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the crumbs scattered across the wood grain. I looked at her, sitting across from me, her face a mixture of anger and sadness. She wouldn't meet my eyes, and I wasn't sure if I wanted her to. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I thought maybe she was waiting for me to speak first. But I didn't have any words left. Then she broke the silence. Her voice was quiet, almost too calm. "I think we should end this," she said. "The marriage, I mean." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I didn't react, maybe because deep down, I knew she was right. I nodded slowly, not trusting myself to speak right away. "We can figure out who gets what," she continued, her tone steady but her eyes still fixed on the table. "The house, the car, other things, without making things messy in divorce court." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Yeah," I said finally, "that's probably for the best." The words tasted bitter coming out, like I was admitting defeat, but what else could I say? The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair, and no amount of glue was going to put it back together. We started talking logistics. What would happen to the house, the bank accounts, even the furniture? It felt like we were negotiating a business deal instead of dividing up the life we'd shared for years. I wanted to tell her I was sorry, not just for the affair, but for everything. But the words got stuck in my throat. I wasn't sure if it was too late for apologies or if she even wanted to hear them. By the time we finished, the kitchen felt emptier. She got up and started clearing the table without a word. And I just sat there, staring at my hands. The open marriage wasn't working, it hadn't fixed anything, it had only made things worse. So we agreed, no drawn-out fights, no dragging each other through court. If we were going to end this, we'd do it as calmly as possible. At least, that was the plan. The process of dividing our life was surprisingly clinical, like splitting up office supplies after a company shut down. We sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. listing out everything we owned: Jubei house, the car, the furniture, and even the small things like our favorite coffee mugs. Each item came with a question: who gets this? Each decision felt oddly robotic, like we were co-workers filing paperwork rather than two people who once loved each other. But behind every choice, there was tension. We were keeping things civil, but it was clear that neither of us was okay. That's when the jealousy started to show, not in loud, obvious ways, but in small moments that caught us both off guard. One evening, she got a text. I didn't mean to look, but the name on the screen caught my eye. Ju was her boss. It hit me harder than I expected. I had to walk away before I said something I'd regret. I told myself it didn't matter, we were separating, after all, but it did matter, and I hated that it did. Later that week, I mentioned I'd be meeting up with a friend. She suspected it was her best friend. The way her face fell, just for a second, said everything. She tried to play it off and made some sarcastic comments about me moving on quickly. But I could see the hurt behind her eyes. It was the same hurt I'd felt when I saw the text from her boss. Neither of us wanted to admit it, but the jealousy was still there, and it wasn't about them. Ju was about us. One night, after another exhausting round of dividing our lives, I sat alone in what used to be our living room. The walls felt emptier than they should have, even though nothing had been packed yet. That's when it hit me. I thought back to when we first agreed to the open marriage. We told ourselves it was about trying something new, exploring, or keeping things fresh. But now, looking at the wreckage of our marriage, I realized it was nothing more than a distraction. A way to avoid dealing with the cracks that had been forming for years. The jealousy I felt wasn't because she had someone else, it was because, deep down, I still wanted to be the one who made her smile like that. And maybe, just maybe, she felt the same way about me. Days later, during one of our usual arguments, we were in the middle of discussing who would keep what once the divorce was finalized. The tension between us had been unbearable for weeks. Every conversation felt like a battle, and this one was no different. But then, out of nowhere, she brought up an old memory, a happy one from when we were just starting together. And for the first time in years, we both laughed. Ju was real, unguarded, and unexpected. That small moment of shared joy felt strange after all the bitterness, but it also felt good. I think it surprised both of us. It was the first genuine connection we'd had in years. That laugh opened the door to something we hadn't done in a long time. Ju honestly. Not about the surface stuff, but about what we were feeling. For the first time, we dropped the defenses. She admitted she had agreed to the open marriage not because she wanted to, but because she thought it might save what we had left. She said she was desperate, lonely, and didn't know how to tell me she felt like she was losing me. I told her the truth too. I told her how I'd shut down emotionally long before we even talked about opening up our marriage. I thought distancing myself would make things easier, but all it did was push her further away. Saying it out loud hurt, but it also felt like a weight lifting off my chest. We both owned up to the ways we had failed each other, and for the first time, it felt like we were on the same page. After that night, we made a decision. We're done with the open marriage, and we would abandon the divorce. The open marriage hadn't brought us closer, it had only added to the damage. We both agreed to commit to each other again. Closing the marriage felt like taking the first step towards something better, something we hadn't had in a long time. Rust. But we knew we couldn't do it alone. We started couples therapy. It wasn't easy. Some sessions left us feeling raw and exposed, but others gave us small victories. I learned how much she needed to feel seen and valued, and she learned how much I needed to feel supported and respected. It's not perfect, we still argue, we still have our moments of doubt. But for the first time in years, we're trying, we're rebuilding, piece by piece. And while I don't know what the future holds, I'm hopeful that we can find our way back to what we once had, and maybe even something better. Love isn't perfect, it's messy, flawed, and often painful. But for the first time in years, I feel like we're choosing each other again, and that's enough. What do you think? If you were in my shoes, would you have tried to save the marriage like we did, or would you have walked away after the confessions? Have you ever faced a moment in a relationship where honesty changed everything, for better or worse? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, I'm curious to hear your perspective. And if this story resonates with you, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, please like and share this video. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the greatest healing.